I'm Roxanne Saccketti, and this is MIDI orchestration in Finale. We're going to create a template by setting up Finale in the MIDI audio menu. 4 things there. Human playback, we're going to go through 3 slides, and moving on to Score Manager where all of the fun is. First, we're going to start with the document setup wizard, setting up our score, and we're going to compose in concert pitch. There are a few things to remember when composing for video games. Compose for the interactive player, remembering that the player's action will trigger another theme. Fit the video game theme that you're writing on one page. Write your stems right into your form, and remember that a dominant function chord or some transitional chord will often be the last chord in your theme. Think of textures when composing your stems. For instance, this suggestion from Michael Sweet in his book Writing Interactive Music for Video Games suggests 3 different textures. Horizontal resequencing, you have the theme, the transition, perhaps another theme, transition, and a 3rd theme. But vertical remixing is more the way we think of when we write stems, where an instrument will play, then an instrument will play again, and there will be a harmony, or in the 3rd column there will be an instrument, a harmony, and an octave doubling. Branching would be a situation where an instrument plays and then another instrument plays, sort of like call and response. We're going to work through the MIDI audio menu by making sure that Finale will play through a VST instrument in the appropriate staff line. The VST banks and effects, what to do there, how to plan our banks, layers and channels, and the device setup. Now we will cover human playback. First, we go into the human playback settings by selecting this little icon with the speaker. Once we're in there, we will see that we need to change the current counter setting. That will help us to be able to work in any measure as we're writing with the score. Next, we're going to go over human playback preferences, and we're dealing with 4 tabs in setting up human playback in this project. Instrument techniques, MIDI data, glissandi and bends, and ornament tremolos. The instrument techniques tab, we want to make sure all of our Garriton controls and instruments are active and checked that way. In the MIDI data tab, we want to make sure everything is indicated that we want HP incorporate data so that everything will be played in human playback. In the glissandi bends tab, I chose chromatic glissandos. You may choose other glissandos in your project. So under the Ornaments and Tremolos tab, I wanted to check humanized rolls and trills, which means my snare rolls, my timpani rolls, my trills for any instrument will be played back in a way that the human ear would like to hear that. And then last but not least, the attached to the file name is a way to have our custom human playback preferences to be attached to our file, and we can use that in other projects. The human playback custom area is where you can customize the actual playback of the sound in Finale that differentiates from the standard Finale settings. For this project, I chose slurs, ornaments and tremolos, hairpins and dynamics, and glissandi and bends, and I wanted to make sure that my soloists were different in the way they played versus the section players. I made a decision not to, for instance, choose Baroque style ornaments because every time my flutes played, they were playing in 7 different styles in the example, and I didn't want them to play Baroque every time. But you can see that this is a way to customize the sounds of your playback to make them much more realistic in Finale. This is where the fun is. We're going to look at Score Manager and Contact or another VST. Just remember to save frequently because Score Manager will crash and at times does not turn off the VSTs. So I saved a file and its backup and saved frequently and kept working. We're going to take a look in Score Manager at the score order, staff additions and changes, the custom display, and the MIDI VST setup we're going to look at in Contact. We're going to follow our bank plan. Think like banks are racks, and think like layers are tracks. And so we're going to make sure, we have one rule to make sure the VST MIDI channels match the Finale MIDI channels. Let's take a look at the power of layers. Usually in layers, when we're making a drum groove, we put the kick on layer 1, the snare on layer 2, the cymbals on layer 3, and the auxiliary percussion on layer 4. But in this project, we're going to put kits in layers. On layer 1, the fusion kit, layer 2, the brush kit, layer 3, the electronic kit, and layer 4, the steel drums kit. And you can see how I followed through on the timpani staff. Layer 1 is timpani, layer 2 is basic orchestral percussion, layer 3 is our orchestra toms, and layer 4 is the tubular bells. In the strings, you can have both a Finale and a Contact or VST instrument and the same staff. It's just distributed in layers. So on layer 1 I have the Garriton strings, and on layer 2 the Contact strings. And remember, Finale will let you put 2 instruments on every layer, so you could have a whole group playing. So please remember 2 things. We're going to use 1 drum kit per layer, and we're going to use Garriton and Contact for a mixed instrument in layers. Moving on to drum sets and drum grooves. When we're working with drum sets, we're going to choose a layer, select a region, and put our drum set in. If we want to change the drum set, we just go to Utilities, Change the Instrument, and the second step is add that changed instrument name using the expression tool into the score. For drum grooves, we're going to use a plugin. We just go to Plugins, Scoring and Arranging, Drum Groove. And Finale will use our custom MIDI files in the drum grooves, so we can make our own drum grooves. It's located in the component folder, and we just place the groove in the layer and choose normal notation, and it will adapt it to as many measures as we are trying to fill. This is a MIDI orchestration signal flowchart, and it's an asset for your decision-making process. The template we made in this project is Finale dominated, but we really don't work that way. If you take it back a step, what we do is we input with a controller, we key in notes, we use our modulation wheel. In order to do that, though, we need to go into Finale into hyperscribe mode, which means we have to turn off human playback mode. So we're in hyperscribe mode and we're inputting everything. When we're done, we turn on human playback mode in Finale, we do our MIDI orchestration, and then all the VSTs that we use, we can use those in the DAW to do deeper mixing and production. And we can also import all the MIDI lines of all the parts that we've written right into our DAW and continue to work on our project. It's important to present that if you are working with Garriton KS key switching commands in the areas of strings, it will govern solo strings and KS section strings, and the only key switches there are is arco, pizzicato, and tremolo. Custom key switches can be created in Finale. Custom key switching expressions, articulations, and smart shapes. When you're creating these, make sure you duplicate from an original so that it won't be changed forever. You must have the HP human playback on. The expressions and smart shapes are created in the expression designer, and if a playback parameter changes over time, that's when you use a custom smart shape. One efficient way to handle continuous control commands is to create a custom item in Expression Designer. We're going to look at the human playback on and off expressions in the score. Thanks for watching MIDI orchestration in Finale. I hope you enjoyed it.